Nobody builds motorhomes with a second floor. Until now. What you're looking at is the Obsidian Apex D2. And the thing that makes this concept genuinely difficult to process, the thing that separates it from every other luxury motorhome concept I have analyzed on this channel, is not the size. It is not the finish. It is that glass upper deck. A full panoramic living room, elevated above the road, moving through the landscape like a private viewing gallery on wheels. Full transparency before we get into it. This is an AI-generated concept. No factory, no production line, no price tag, pure imagination. But what the designer has proposed here is architecturally serious enough that it deserves a proper breakdown, not as a fantasy, but as a genuine argument for where luxury mobility could go. Here is what we are covering. We are walking every surface of the exterior and unpacking why that light trim language works. We are going floor by floor through the interior logic, upper deck first, then lower. We are getting into the powertrain reality of moving something this size. And at the end, I am telling you the one structural decision in this concept that I think is genuinely underrated, and the one that concerns me. Both of them are in the upper deck. I am saving them for when we get there. Let us start outside. The front face of the Obsidian Apex D2 is doing something I have not seen resolve this cleanly on a concept at this scale. It is communicating two things simultaneously, and they should be in conflict, but they are not. The lower section of the front is muscular, hexagonal geometric cladding, a deep chin that reads as structural rather than decorative. LED accent strips running the perimeter of the fascia in that champagne gold that you will see repeated across the entire vehicle. This bottom half is telling you, I am serious hardware. I move under my own authority. Then above that, glass. A panoramic cab window that wraps around the cockpit with a surface area most Class A motorhomes would reserve for an entire sidewall. The driver's view from behind that glass would be extraordinary. You would not feel like you were operating a large vehicle. You would feel like you were piloting a building. The badge is small, deliberately small. On a vehicle this architecturally confident, a large badge would be insecurity. This designer understood that. Step back to the full side profile and take a moment with it. Because this is where the Obsidian Apex D2 makes its most extraordinary argument. The lower deck runs the full habitable length of the vehicle. I am estimating somewhere between 12 and 14 meters of total vehicle length based on the triaxle chassis proportions. The lower deck windows are deep and wide. You can see furniture through them. A lounge, what appears to be a dining configuration, clean sight lines all the way through the vehicle. That level of transparency at lower deck height is already more glass than most luxury motorhome concepts attempt. But then the upper deck. That is where this concept becomes something else entirely. The entire upper level is glass on three sides. There is no opaque wall. There is no solid panel breaking the view. From the outside, you are looking at what appears to be a fully glazed living room, cantilevered above the road. The structural logic of how that glass box sits on top of the lower chassis is one of the things I want to come back to in the interior section because it raises a real engineering question. What I will say about the profile right now, the roofline above the upper deck has an integrated panel system, almost certainly imagined as a solar array, that adds a fifth horizontal layer to the silhouette. Front fascia, lower body, upper glass, roof panel, for distinct horizontal bands. This is not accidental. This is compositional architecture. The designer knows exactly what they are doing with light and proportion. The gold perimeter lighting. Let us talk about this specifically because it is the single most powerful design decision on the exterior, and I think it is being underestimated. Most luxury vehicle concepts use accent lighting as decoration. A strip here, a detail there. The Obsidian Apex D2 uses it as a drawing tool. The champagne gold lines trace every structural edge of the vehicle, the roofline, the lower body crease, the wheel arch geometry, the front fascia perimeter. When you step back and look at the full vehicle, What you are seeing is a technical drawing of the vehicle's architecture, executed in light, laid over the obsidian black body. In a dark environment, night driving, an underground car park, a mountain road at dusk, this vehicle would not just be visible. It would be legible. You would read its proportions and its scale from a distance before you registered it as a vehicle. That is genuinely rare in motorhome design. That is superyacht thinking applied to a road vehicle. The triaxle chassis. 3 axles, 6 wheels, with what appears to be a dual rear bogie, 2 rear axles closed set, which you find on heavy coach platforms and high-spec expedition vehicles. On a double-deck platform carrying this much glass and the structural load of a full upper floor, a triaxle configuration is not excess. It is the minimum sensible engineering. The wheels are low-profile, dark alloy, multi-spoke, and deliberately understated. On a vehicle this visually complex, restrained wheels are the right call. Anything more aggressive would compete with the light trim language. These wheels know their role. They are load-bearing architecture, not jewelry. The stance is low, deliberately low for a double-decker, which tells you the suspension geometry has been thought through. A high ride height on a vehicle with a second-floor glass box would create a top-heavy visual instability. Keeping the chassis close to the ground anchors the whole composition. And that staircase, right there on the exterior, visible through the glass. The internal connection between the lower deck and the upper deck. That is the detail I want you to hold in your mind as we go inside. Because how that staircase is positioned changes everything about how the interior of this concept actually functions. Let us go up. We are going upper deck first, because that is where this concept earns or loses its argument. And I want to give it the analysis it deserves. Look through that upper glass. What you are seeing is not a viewing platform or an observation lounge. This is a full residential living room, elevated approximately 3.5 to 4 meters above the road surface based on the vehicle proportions. The furniture configuration visible through the glass suggests a forward lounge, seating oriented toward the front of the vehicle, toward the direction of travel, with a direct sight line through that panoramic cab glass we looked at from the exterior. Imagine sitting in that forward lounge while this concept moves through a mountain valley. The road ahead, the sky above, the landscape either side, all of it framed in floor-to-ceiling glass. You are not a passenger in a vehicle. You are a resident in a moving penthouse. The ceiling height on the upper deck, based on the exterior proportions, is likely 2.0 to 2.2 meters. Slightly lower than you might expect, because the designer has correctly prioritized visual connection over vertical drama up here. What matters on the upper deck is not how tall the ceiling feels. It is how infinite the view feels. Those are completely different design problems. This concept solves the right one. Natural light on the upper deck would be total. From sunrise to sunset, you would have direct light entering from 3 sides simultaneously, front, both flanks, and through the roof panel overhead. There would be no dark corner, no dead zone. The entire upper floor would shift in character through the day as the sun moves. That is not interior design. That is landscape architecture. Now, the staircase. I told you it was important. Here is why. On a double-decker vehicle of this length, the position of the internal staircase determines the zone logic of both floors. From what is visible through the exterior glass, the staircase appears to be positioned at approximately the midpoint of the vehicle, slightly aft of center. That is the correct placement. It means the upper deck splits naturally into a forward lounge zone and a rear zone, likely a more private space, possibly a study or a second sleeping area. And the lower deck splits into a forward living area and a rear private zone. A centered staircase on a vehicle this long means you never have to walk the full length of the lower deck to access the upper. The vertical transition happens in the heart of the concept. That is intelligent spatial planning. That is the kind of decision an architect makes, not a vehicle designer. Moving down to the lower deck. Based on the exterior glass depth and the interior furniture visible through the side windows, Here is how I think this floor is organized. Forward of the staircase, the primary social zone. A full lounge and dining configuration. The lower deck windows here are deep enough that the seated eye level would be close to the bottom of the glass, meaning the view from the lounge sofa would be low, wide, and cinematic. Not the elevated panorama of the upper deck. A different relationship with the landscape. Closer, more grounded. In a well-designed double-decker concept, the two floors should offer genuinely different emotional experiences of the same journey. This concept achieves that. The kitchen on a platform this wide, I am estimating 2.4 to 2.6 meters of interior width, would be a proper residential installation. Full-size induction, a real refrigeration system, counter depth that allows genuine food preparation rather than the compromised galley cooking most motorhomes accept. This is the kitchen of someone who does not consider cooking a concession to vehicle living. Aft of the staircase on the lower deck, sleeping and bathroom. The rear sleeping position on a triaxle platform places the bed above the rear bogie. With correct suspension isolation, this is quieter than mid-vehicle placement. The bathroom in the rear corner. The engineering logic for this is water management. Gray water, fresh water tanks, and the pump systems all want to live as far from the living areas as possible for both weight distribution and acoustic reasons. Rear offside is correct. The cockpit. That panoramic front glass from the exterior wraps into a driver environment that, in a production-engineered version, would be digital instrument cluster, full camera array for the triaxle blind zones, and autonomous highway capability as a standard expectation at this positioning level. You do not build a double-deck panoramic luxury motorhome for a driver who wants to grip a wheel on a mountain switchback. You build it for someone who wants to arrive. The cockpit is designed around supervision, not operation. A unified smart system on a vehicle this complex would be managing more variables than almost any other mobile living environment in existence. Dual-zone climate. The upper deck in full sun will gain heat at a completely different rate than the lower deck. Independent climate logic is not optional here. Starlink connectivity as standard. Solar management routing charge cycles based on the real-time deck temperature differential. And probably the most interesting smart system challenge this concept poses, automated glass tinting. On an upper deck with three-sided glass, the ability to darken individual panels independently would be the difference between a comfortable afternoon and an uninhabitable greenhouse. Which brings me to the one structural concern I want to flag before the verdict. I will get to it. Powertrain first. A double-decker motorhome of this length and glass specification would be carrying a structural load that no conventional motorhome chassis is remotely designed for. The upper deck glass alone, full structural glazing on three sides of a moving vehicle, would require laminated safety panels of significant thickness and weight. Add the structural frame required to support that glass under motorway vibration loads, and you are looking at a vehicle that fully loaded, furniture, systems, occupants, provisions, would sit somewhere between 18 and 22 tons. That is heavy coach territory. If this were engineered for reality, the propulsion system would need to be purpose-built. Full electric is the correct direction for the luxury positioning. The acoustic argument for electric in a double-decker is even stronger than in a conventional motorhome, because upper deck occupants sitting in a glass room need near silence to fully experience the concept. A diesel engine at the front of this vehicle would undermine everything the upper deck is trying to deliver. In a near-future production scenario, you would be looking at dual rear-axle electric drive, one motor per rear axle in the bogie configuration, with a combined output of 800 to 1,000 horsepower. Not for speed, for torque authority. Moving 20 tons from rest, maintaining motorway speed on a gradient, and doing all of it without drama requires serious continuous power delivery. Battery capacity in the 600 to 800 kilowatt-hour range, comparable to the largest electric coach platforms currently in development. with fast DC charging capability for overnight replenishment. That integrated roof panel system. On a vehicle with this roof surface area, significantly larger than a conventional single-deck motorhome, a full solar array would generate 2,000 to 2,500 watts of peak capacity. On a stationary day in good sunlight, that sustains climate control, lighting, connectivity, and kitchen systems indefinitely. This concept is not imagining a vehicle that needs a campsite hookup. It is imagining something that parks wherever the landscape is most interesting and operates entirely on its own terms. Starlink is standard. Smart climate with individual deck zones. Automated glass tinting managed by solar gain sensors. This is not the technology of the future. Every component I just described either exists or is in active development today. The Obsidian Apex D2 is simply the most architecturally ambitious package anyone has proposed for it. Alright, the Obsidian Apex D2. Here is the honest read. What it does genuinely well. The light trim language. I said it in the exterior section and I will say it again in the verdict because it is the single most transferable design idea in this entire concept. Using perimeter lighting as a compositional drawing tool, tracing the vehicle's architecture in gold light against an obsidian body is a decision I have not seen executed at this level on any motorhome concept before. It is the kind of idea that, in 5 years, you will see derivative versions of across the entire luxury RV market. This concept did it first and did it cleanest. What seems impractical? The upper deck glass in real-world operation. And I want to be specific about why, because this is not about whether the glass is beautiful. It is. The problem is thermal management. A 3-sided glass room elevated above the road surface with no natural shading, in direct sun, on a summer afternoon, would become thermally unlivable without an aggressive climate system running constantly. And an aggressive climate system running constantly is in direct tension with the off-grid solar promise of the concept. The designer has created the most spectacular viewing experience imaginable and simultaneously one of the most challenging thermal engineering problems in mobile living. Automated tinting helps, but it does not fully resolve it. The most impressive detail, the staircase placement. I told you I was saving this. An interior staircase at the midpoint of the vehicle, not tucked in the rear, not awkwardly positioned at the front, means that both floors are equally accessible from anywhere in the vehicle. It also means the staircase becomes the social spine of the concept, the point where upper deck and lower deck life intersect. In a penthouse apartment, the staircase is often the most architecturally considered element of the entire space. This designer applied that thinking to a motorhome. That is genuinely sophisticated spatial planning. One thing I would change. The lower deck window depth. From the exterior, the lower deck glass sits noticeably higher off the floor than it should for a seated lounge experience. The sill line appears to be at approximately seated shoulder height, which means someone sitting in the lounge sofa is looking at the bottom edge of the window rather than through it. A lower sill line, floor-to-ceiling glass on the lower deck matching the ambition of the upper, would complete the concept. Right now the lower deck is supporting the upper deck visually. It should be its equal. What it signals? The Obsidian Apex D2 is making an argument that the future of luxury motorhome design is vertical, not horizontal. Every other concept in this space is trying to make a single floor wider, longer, better equipped. This concept asks a completely different question. What if you just added a floor? What if the road became your ground level, and the living room floated above it in glass? That question, not the answer, the question, is what makes this concept worth analyzing seriously. It is fictional. It is AI-generated. It does not exist in any factory or showroom anywhere in the world. And it is still the most architecturally ambitious motorhome concept I have seen this year. Comment for question upper deck all-glass panoramic lounge, or a more enclosed upper deck with better thermal control. Which would you actually want to live in? Let me know below. I already know this one is going to divide people. Subscribe Vault Motion. If breaking down concepts like this, architecturally, honestly, without the hype, is what you come to YouTube for, subscribing is the most efficient way to not miss the next one. Every concept we cover gets this treatment. See you on the next one.